When you think hacker, you probably picture someone just hammering away at a keyboard, breaking through firewalls in like 2 seconds flat. Hollywood stuff, right? Well, the reality? It's way more like a quiet, calculated game of chess. So let's open up the real hacker's playbook and see how the game is actually played.
So that's the big question, isn't it? How does an attacker really go from being a total outsider to completely owning a system from the inside? It's not some single magic leap. No, it's a very deliberate journey. And today, we're going to follow that journey, step by step, using their own playbook.
Okay, so here's our roadmap. A system compromise, it basically unfolds in 4 key stages. First, you gotta get in the door. Second, you find the master keys. Third, you make a copy of those keys for yourself, just in case. And finally, you wipe your fingerprints clean so no one ever knew you were there. Let's kick things off with that very first step, gaining access. All right, so the very first gatekeeper of pretty much any system is the password. For an attacker, this is the digital front door. And believe me, they have a whole toolbox dedicated to picking that lock. These attacks, they fall into a few different categories. You've got your online attacks. That's kind of like trying to guess a safes combination while you're standing right there in the room, with alarms and guards watching your every move. But the really powerful method, that's the offline attack. Now that's like stealing the entire safe, taking it back to your workshop, and just cracking it open with all your heavy-duty tools completely off the radar. Nobody knows what you're up to. And one of their most effective offline tools is something called a rainbow table. Now just think of it as a massive pre-made answer key. See, systems don't actually store your password in plain text. That'd be crazy. Instead, they store a scrambled version of it, what we call a hash. A rainbow table is basically a giant dictionary that maps millions and millions of common passwords to their pre-calculated hashes. And here's pretty much how it works. You've got simple passwords on one side, and on the other, they're unique, scrambled-up hashes. So an attacker steals the system's password file, which is really just a list of those hashes. They don't have to sit there and guess your password. Nope. They just look up the hash in their rainbow table, and bam, they instantly find the password that matches. So the big takeaway here is this. Just because your password is hashed by the system, that absolutely does not mean it's safe. If you're using a common password, anything simple, its hash is almost certainly sitting in a rainbow table somewhere, just waiting to be found in seconds, literally seconds. And hey, this isn't just some theory, These are screenshots of real tools doing exactly that. You can literally see them taking a list of those user hashes and boom, in no time at all, they're spitting out the original passwords. Apple, QWERTY, test. All those simple, common passwords, they didn't stand a chance. Okay, so how do we fight back against this? This is the counter move. First up, complexity. Longer passwords, mixed characters, numbers, symbols, they're just much, much harder to pre-calculate and put in a table. Second, systems can use something called salting. That's where they add a unique, random value to your password before they hash it. This creates a totally unique hash every single time, making those pre-made rainbow tables pretty much useless. And of course, just basic security hygiene. Lock accounts after too many bad guesses, and for goodness sake, never ever reuse your passwords. Okay, so the attacker has cracked a password. They're in. But that's just step 1, right? They're probably just a standard user with pretty limited access. Their real goal is to climb that privilege ladder and become an administrator. That's when they get total control of the system. And the difference is, well, it's pretty simple. As a standard user, you can use the house. But as an administrator, you own the house. You've got the keys to every single room, you can change all the locks, and you get to decide who else gets to come inside. That's the power an attacker is after. The process of getting that power, it's called privilege escalation. And just like this quote says, it is all about exploiting weaknesses. The attacker is basically hunting for any crack in the foundation, a bug, a flaw, a bad configuration, anything that lets them go from being a guest to the king of the castle. Okay, now take a look at this. You've probably seen this a million times, right? Hit the shift key 5 times, and this little accessibility helper pops right up. It seems completely harmless. But you know what? An attacker sees a doorway. And here is the big aha moment.
Because sticky keys can be launched from the login screen, we're talking before anyone is even logged in, it runs with really high-level system privileges. So an attacker who already has that initial access can just replace the sticky keys program with the command prompt. Now, when they get back to the login screen, they hit Shift 5 times, and instead of that little pop-up, they get a command prompt with full administrator powers. I mean, it's an incredibly clever and sneaky trick. So at this point, the attacker has administrator access. The system is, for all intents and purposes, theirs. But their work isn't done yet, not by a long shot. Now they need to make sure they can get back in whenever they want, and do it all without ever being seen. So to keep that access, they'll plan their own tools. This could be a backdoor. Think of it like a secret entrance that lets them bypass the normal login completely. Or it could be something like spyware or a keylogger to record everything the user types and does. But to use these tools, they have to hide them in plain sight. And one of the absolute cleverest hiding places is a little-known feature of the Windows file system called alternate data streams, or ADS. So think of a normal file like a text document. It has a main stream of data, the text you can actually see. But the file system allows you to attach these hidden, alternate streams of data to that very same file. What this means is an attacker can take a malicious program, like their keylogger, and just tuck it away inside the alternate data stream of a totally harmless-looking file, like readme.txt. The file will look completely normal, its size won't even change, and it'll be totally invisible to you in a normal file browser. But the attacker, they know exactly how to find and execute that hidden code. It is the perfect digital secret compartment.
Okay, so their tools are hidden and their access is secure. Now the attacker moves to the final, and maybe most critical phase, erasing the evidence. Because let's be honest, a successful compromise is one that is never, ever discovered.
And the cleanup is very systematic. First, they disable auditing. That's basically like turning off all the security cameras. Then they clear the system logs. That's the security footage, wiping any entries that show what they did. They might even go in and manipulate the logs to create a totally false story. And finally, they securely delete all of their tools, leaving the system as if they were never there. Wow. So we've just walked through the entire hacker's playbook, from picking the lock to wiping away the fingerprints. And yeah, it can seem pretty intimidating. But here's the good news. Every single attack has a defense. So let's flip the script and talk about building our own digital fortress. All right, here are your key defenses, and they're designed to counter everything we've just seen. First, to protect that front door, use strong, unique passwords, and please, use multi-factor authentication. That's what requires a second code from your phone to log in. To block that privilege escalation stuff, keep your software updated. Updates are what patch the very bugs that attackers use to climb the ladder. To minimize damage if they do get in, run with the lowest privileges you need. That way, even if an attacker gets in, they're trapped in a single room. They're not given the keys to the whole house. And finally, to spot intruders, keep an eye on your system logs. That way, you'll see the fingerprints they tried so hard to wipe away. At the end of the day, security isn't about one single lock. It's about building layers of defense. So the final question really is this. When you look at your own digital life as a fortress, how strong are your walls? And maybe more importantly, are you watching the gates?